In 1712, Thomas Newcomen built the first practical steam engine. This is considered to be one of the most important inventions ever made. But have you ever heard of Thomas Newcomen? Probably not. Why is that? Well, about 10 years later, another guy named Thomas Watt improved upon this design and is the one who is normally credited with inventing the steam engine. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the life of Thomas Newcomen and how he invented the first practical steam engine. Thomas Newcomen was born in 1664 in England. He was an average student in school, but when he was 16, he contracted a serious case of smallpox, which killed most of the people that contracted it. But for whatever reason, he survived. Now, I don't know if this was part of his character development or what, but after surviving such a deadly disease, he became deeply religious and started attending Anglican church services every day. He also married a woman named Elizabeth Custis, and they had 4 children together. Now, usually when you think of famous inventors, you think of mad scientists who spent all their time in the lab and didn't have much of a social life. And this isn't really the case for Thomas, because despite being a devout churchgoer and husband and father, he also managed to make time to work on his inventions. For example, he developed a new type of carriage that could be pulled by horses without having to put a harness on them. This invention saved a lot of horses from being overworked, and it also made carriage rides a lot more comfortable. It also earned him enough money to never have to work a day in his life again. So why did he continue working as an inventor? Well, there were 2 reasons. One was that he wanted to help out his community by inventing things that would make life easier for them. And the other reason was that he was just plain curious about how the world works and wanted to explore that. In 1708, he was approached by the English mining industry because they were looking for ways to pump water out of their mines. See, back in the 1700s, coal was mined by digging deep shafts into the ground and then manually scooping the coal out. The problem was that whenever the miners would dig deeper and deeper into the ground, they would eventually run into water that would start seeping into the mine. And unfortunately, back in the 1700s, they didn't have any waterproof material, so the only thing they could do was try to pump the water out. The problem was that this was incredibly labor-intensive, and they were constantly having to bail out water. And because of this, they could only build mines that were about 100 meters deep, because any deeper than that, and the water would accumulate too quickly and drown the miners. Now this was a pretty big problem, because coal was incredibly valuable back in the day, since it was used primarily for heating and cooking. There was no such thing as electricity back then, so people would use fireplaces to keep their homes warm, and they would use fireplaces and wood-burning stoves to cook their food. So basically, coal was essential to their way of life. The mining industry had tried many different methods of pumping water out of their mines, but they needed something that could work underwater and pump up the water to the surface. So they turned to Thomas for help. After some trial and error, he came up with a design for a device that would be powered by steam and was able to pump water out of the mines. The way it worked was that water from the mine would be pumped into a boiler, which would then turn into steam and exert pressure on a piston, which would move up and down, which would then move a connecting rod and crank, which would finally move a water pump. It was definitely a very complicated machine by today's standards, but by 1712, it was revolutionary. This machine was able to pump water out of the mines much faster than any human could, which meant that the miners could now go deeper than ever before. This invention is considered to be the first practical steam engine ever created. But as we talked about in the intro, credit for inventing the steam engine normally goes to Thomas Watt. The reason for this is that in 1775, Watt greatly improved upon Newcomen's design and created the separate condenser, which significantly increased the efficiency of the steam engine. Today, we have Watt to thank for inventing the steam engine, but we also have to thank Thomas Newcomen for coming up with the idea in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, Please leave a like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.